First of all, welcome to everyone. My name is Robert Keogh. I am the Director of Technology and Product here in SmartTech 247. And today I have the wonderful opportunity to be joined by Maruna, fantastic and very talented. So maybe over to you, Maruna.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. I am Miruna. I'm working in the SOC operations department here based in Romania. And yeah, I'm a cybersecurity analyst and looking forward to having this session.
Very good. I think you definitely understand yourself a little bit. one of our most experienced people in the entire organization. So yes, fantastic to be able to get some insight from your knowledge today. So maybe we'll start off with a very easy, soft question and get things going. I guess your role has some wonderful opportunities to see kind of different things and exposed to a lot of bleeding edge problems and also, let's say, challenges and solutions. So maybe you could just give me brief insight. What is a recent and surprising AI use case that you have encountered?
Well, to be honest, because I'm not going to give a technical use case that I've encountered my day-to-day operations, but just to talk from personal experience I recently had because I was in deep necessity to get a medical appointment. And of course, all applications now for medical appointments have this AI chatbot. And so as opposed to what we used to do in the past, as in to get to the call center and then wait for 15 minutes to get to that line and stuff like that, I managed to get a good appointment in 2 minutes for my back pain. So yeah, that was a very, very good one for me personally.
Yeah, in fact, I think that's a very good one of where AI is very useful, this kind of customer support or customer interaction. It's definitely if we think about what is the impact of AI in cybersecurity, this is definitely one way that it has heavily impacted, especially in the fintech industry and financial services industry, customer support, and I guess the other very large use case would be fraud detection. Both very interesting, and I guess it's one of the things where we see, historically, fintech and have moved, and especially banks have moved a little bit slower perhaps than other organizations. They were definitely, let's say, a little bit slower to take on mobiles. I mean, now they're all in on mobiles. But I guess AI is something that we're seeing now that companies are being very proactive on, because not only is it a benefit to the end users like mobile was, but AI is very much a way for companies to improve their operational efficiency and also, of course, to decrease the amount of fraud. So I guess AI is going to introduce a lot of problems with fraud. It was interesting that Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, explicitly called out banks, saying that banks that still rely on voice for user identity, voice prints for user identity and verification, said, I quote, has been completely broken by AI. And so this is definitely an issue we're going to see, I guess, in the future with both voice and, of course, with video as well. The other interesting thing I would call out was how NatWest now announced their partnership, the multi-hundred-dollar partnership with OpenAI for detecting fraud. And already there's some outcomes from that, the Australian Commonwealth Bank recently announced that they had seen a 67% decrease in fraud, in the amount of fraud that was detected because AI was detecting. And I guess this is a very interesting area in general for fintechs and banks and the general finance industry. Is these fraud use cases primarily, first of course, for EU, for their own operational reasons, but of course also for EU and anti-money laundering reasons. And I guess this brings up maybe an interesting topic about regulation. The banking sector and the finance sector, of course, is heavily regulated, both at a national level but also at a EU level. And maybe, Maruna, you could talk to us a little bit about the EU AI Act and the EU regulation that's coming online for the financial services and fintech industry.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point because, we've been seeing AI being used in the past years but then we only had this law coming in, I think 2024. And so there was a high and critical need for this because when we talk about especially financial services and then banking and fintech, we talk about high risk systems because it basically impacts how people access money. And so it also impacts the financial market. And it's very important to mention the fact that this regulation comes with compliance considerations. Why we need those, to give an example, like when we talk about credit scoring, just imagine if we would have like an interference, people wouldn't be able to access a loan or access their money. And then if we think about biometric ID verification, there's also like GDPR compliance and stuff. And then we also want to talk about identity theft risk, which is very like common nowadays with the AI deepfakes and all. And so what this act did in the EU, and I know there are more compliance considerations coming up, but we'll be updated for those. We have these key points that we need to touch from financial institutions, and that is to, first of all, do this risk assessment and make sure that every step of the AI systems and every step of the AI model is actually verified. And then what we also want to do is get a full transparency because individuals need to know that we are handling systems using AI as well. There's also a need to document and track everything from a data governance perspective because we need to understand how these models are trained, what data we're using, what are the sources that are being used to get this information to the AI models. And then we have to ensure proper documentation of that and also make sure that just in case of an audit, and there will be audits, everything is in place. And to talk about from a cybersecurity perspective, we need to make sure that there is a proper red teaming exercise done for that, because with all these attacks coming up that are leveraging AI, we need to make sure that we train our people and then that we also test our systems from an error perspective, but then also from manipulation perspective from the threat attackers. And yeah, there are a lot of considerations that need to be taken, but the thing is that financial institutions need to look at AI as both, a proper tool that they could use and help them getting their, I don't know, what they want to achieve through those models and systems and applications. But then we have to understand that it is a risk vector and we have to do this proper assessment for that.
Yeah, I did actually was reading an interesting article just last week where not just in fintech, but just in general technology that EU tech regulators just last week demanded from from the using Digital Services Act. So not just AI regulation, shall we say, but also the Digital Services Act has been used to prevent scams or specifically financial fraud from happening on these large platforms, like Facebook and X and so forth. So definitely, it seems like the EU has been very proactive in trying to protect customers and businesses from online fraud.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, before we move on, I should say that also our colleague Ed Burke is in the comments. So if there are any questions, please reach out. Just feel free to comment or reach out to Ed Burke directly if you have any questions or you would have a meeting or discuss any of these things in detail. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation. Yeah, and maybe just to continue on from your point, Maruna, so AI has definitely had a large impact, on analysts and how analysts protect organizations. And maybe wondering, could you expand a little bit on that? What is the human impact of AI and how have analyst workflows being affected by AI?
Yeah. To go to two pillars actually, because I want to look at financial analysts and then we can also look at cybersecurity analysts for SOC operations. But for financial analysts, when we talk about fraud investigations, for example, normally without the usage of automated tools and AI, the analyst would have to go through a lot of transactions, do that manually, and then analyze the logs and then devices used and the IP locations, do everything manually, which takes a lot of time. But then with this AI implemented, there's definitely like a very good impact in terms of like time spent to do that. Of course, we still need humans to actually verify and give like a clear verdict, of course, from an ethical perspective and then legal and that. But we're talking about reducing time. So that's a very, very huge benefit from it.
And I'm wondering, so like we've talked a lot about of the benefits of AI, but of course, there are definitely challenges with AI, and I guess the common one that people would probably be familiar with are hallucinations. And I'm wondering, like, how does this, let's say, knowledge that AI is imperfect and can cause bias and can cause hallucinations and problems, like how much do analysts trust AI-driven recommendations versus their own judgment?
To be honest, there's like very balanced here. Like analysts use AI a lot nowadays because it's like embedded in all these source systems and SIEMs, and we have this enhanced playbooks with AI with the new vendors coming up. But the thing is that they're actually using this as a guideline. So there's no actual like relying on the AI. I can tell you that because I work in the stock operations. So
Yeah.
nobody actually trusts them, 100%. You use it just to get more insights and to help you get the data like faster. But that doesn't mean you actually rely on it. So we're using AI basically as like a help tool, but not like to get the actual final verdict in terms of escalation or containment or so yeah, it does help us, but it's not like our primer.
Yeah. I guess a very good like kind of balanced approach where you're trying to get the best out of both worlds, like this,
Yeah.
get the most from AI while still having a human in the loop to, shall we say, validate that yes, this is the correct thing. I guess one of the other key benefits that like AI promises to deliver, especially from that security operations point of view, is to reduce alert fatigue. So I guess what are your thoughts on that? Has it helped to reduce false positives, or like has it just changed, let's say, the type of noise that the system would produce?
Again, I think it's a little bit of both because we do see AI embedded now in the detection models, so built-in seams and all. But I wouldn't say necessarily in terms of false positives, there's not very much to say there. But in terms of alert fatigue, yeah, we do see a shift. Uh, because again, we have this time reducing alerts and the fact that now we have these models that actually correlate more alerts into a single incident, so analysts don't have to spend time watching at 10 alerts because they have that in a single one. So yeah, we do see that as an improvement, definitely.
And maybe the other place, one of the challenges many companies face with is finding the right people, and then even after they found them, is like how do they train them? How do they onboard them so that they are like productive? And has AI helped here with like kind of like that onboarding, that learning curve, and kind of making this what can be a very complex topic that can often take weeks, months, for people to like acclimatize. Has it helped there?
Well, from our point of view, as in from a SOC perspective and the way we do the onboarding and training sessions and all, I think AI only came in hand when we want to talk about like condensing information and making it more explanatory for like
Mm.
everybody. So yeah, it does help like to get the information fast and then put it in the proper, format for everyone to understand. And then it also helps us when we want to do like tool training, as in, all the themes that we use in SWORs and EDRs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the only like part where it actually did, not with the onboarding phase necessarily. But that's maybe a question for the HR.
Yeah. Very good. And maybe, we're already running out of time, even though we could continue for another half an hour. I think this is a very interesting domain topic. But I guess want to come back a little bit to kind of like what are the key takeaways so there are organizations now watching this webinar. What are the key things? What are the security roadmap items that a company should think about and plan and prepare for now, kind of moving forward?
Well, I think the main phrase that would be like a key takeaway is that we have to look at AI as both an opportunity and a liability. And when we talk about liability, is like I said earlier, we want to look at it as a risk vector, and we want to build a risk assessment. Then we want to make sure we're actually aligned with compliance, and then from a legal and ethical perspective, and we have to treat it as, you know, another like important sector where we need to actually put our resources and our efforts into it. And one thing that I actually want to emphasize is that we need to also pinpoint on training the users, because I think like staff in the financial services and financial institutions are very important and are like the first layer of security nowadays. So they need to be very trained in order to recognize the emerging threats. So there's a highly need for the security awareness program that is also enhanced with AI content, not just the regular ones we used to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head like that. None of this is like new per se. That AI is still still very much an information security problem. And while there are specific risks, like unique risks to AI, for example, bias and kind of like that black box problem of provenance. Okay, you've come to a decision, but how did you come to that decision? And where being able to prove that you didn't have that. So very much, yeah. My key takeaway or my key recommendation to companies is to think about very much like information security and those six main categories, of course, of governance, identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover, and to have a program to think about it like end to end, to not just go off and start implementing technical controls, to not just go off and take an AI service into use. This is, I guess, something back the Salesforce drift, Salesforce Salesloft drift issue, shows a very, very clearly showed in the last couple of months of what happens when you just take an AI, a random SaaS AI service into use. You can definitely get yourself into a lot of trouble and onto the front page of many newspapers by just accepting, shall we say, AI services. So definitely my recommendation is to treat it like other problems. Make sure that you do it in this like holistic end-to-end way, that you're addressing it from an information security point of view. Who manages the data, who's the data controller, who's controlling things, what is your process to manage this data? Do you have policies in place? Do you have technical controls to validate those processes? So more than anything, yeah, to think about it as just an information security problem. And yes, there will be some unique parts that you will have to think about explicitly for AI, but in general, it's follow good information security practices. Great. I think we are pretty much out of time now. So yeah, I just want to say thank you again, Maruna, for for your time today, and of course for your insights and expertise in the domain. If there are, let me just check if there are any questions. So yeah, no questions yet, at least in the chat. So I think we can then wrap it up. And yes, thank you again, Maruna. Much appreciated your taking the time today to talk to us.